All right, it's now 7 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum. Let's stand and do our Pledge of Allegiance, and then I'll talk about the new microphones. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we, and it's not on the agenda, but before we approve the minutes from the last meeting of June 22nd, we have a new PA system that we're all pretty excited about. If you're looking at your microphone at the base there, you're going to see a tab that shows on the left side, that's the speak. If you push that tab down, your microphone then turns red and the camera will focus in on you for the benefit of the video and internet. When you're done speaking, hit it again and it turns it off. Now, please raise your hand before and wait to be recognized by the chair before you hit the tab. So you'll see that my tab is on, my microphone is glowing red, and then so that way we don't talk over each other when we're discussing these things. Let's do it one at a time. Raise your hand. Does that make sense? Does everybody get that? And just keep in mind that when your microphone is active, the camera will automatically focus on you. So just keep that in mind. As the agenda, the fourth item, we need to approve the minutes from the last meeting of June 22nd, 2021. Does anyone have any changes or corrections to those minutes? Sir, Mr. Graves.
Motion to approve the minutes.
We have a motion to approve by Mr. Graves.
Second.
Do I get a second? Mr. Moreland seconds. So I have a motion and I have a second to approve the minutes as described. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It so passes. Next thing on our agenda, number 5, is the treasurer's report. There's been no activity. You should have a copy of that in your packet. The beginning and ending balance did not change. You have $119,531.50 in the account. Our first order of business, item number 6, is to discuss the application that was submitted to the Industrial Development Board for a funds grants for Iris Plastics. I will say that a representative from Iris is here in case there are questions. If the board has questions, I would encourage you to temper what you discuss openly in public, as some of this information in this document, even though this is a public meeting, is personal and private financial information. So I think we just need to be respectful of their business and not throw around too many specific numbers as you discuss and deliberate this. So I am opening the floor for discussion on this topic. Does anybody want to discuss this? It's a fairly lengthy and comprehensive application that they spent, I'm sure, quite a bit of time putting together. Does anybody have any comments or discussion or questions? Well, let me just go around the room. Ms. Leah, do you have any thoughts on this?
My only thought was that they did not specifically request a specific dollar amount, that they just kind of applied in general. And I was curious, did they have something in mind? I'm sort of new to the whole process, didn't see the application before it was put out there, and don't know what we decided as a board to request of anybody that's applying.
Mr. Jones, would you like to answer that? You can come up, and if you want to sit at one of these tables, you can speak on the microphone. Yeah, that's great at the podium. I forgot we had a microphone there. Mr. Jones, the owner and entrepreneur here that is requesting the funds and is, I know for a fact, has been working tirelessly for quite some time to get his business up and running. So let's give him a chance to talk about it. Mr. Jones, if you'll touch the left side bar, it's already.
Yeah, yes, sir. Thanks for everybody for letting me be here. You're right, I am tired, but I'm happy to be here. Just high level, we make gas cans down at the plant, right? Just right down here in the power comm. We're in the back of an old building, and we put in a machine that came in on 9 truckloads, and it was in a warehouse covered in dust. So it's taken us a little over 18 months with COVID to put this machinery together and to get it functioning properly. We've shipped out about 7 truckloads now, and the customer's pretty keen on getting about 2 per week. It's approximately 13 days of our production time per month. So it's a pretty significant commitment of about 50% of our production capacity. What we did when we applied is we were a little bit unsure of the process ourselves. There's been a lot of different entities and people involved that we've rubbed shoulders with and met, and every experience has been great, from TDEC to Tennessee Central to the local municipalities. Everything's been great, but it's been a little bit hard ourselves to kind of sift through exactly who to ask for what. So ultimately what we feel like, if I could just be transparent, is we feel like we put in all of the capital necessary to meet our customers' expectations. So we have what we need to have people in the building as employees and to run a safe manufacturing operation from morning through the night. So currently we're running 24/5. We don't have sewer down there, so we've got a couple of porta potties. We don't have any kind of a break room, so we're pretty much just in the elements for the time being. And we don't have a functional dock. So each truck that comes and goes takes almost 2 people, and I currently only employ 2 people per shift. So there's kind of a position there where it's like, do you shut the machine off just to load a truck? So we're in a scenario where Tennessee Central was so kind to allow us just the goodwill to go down in the building and to try it. You know, they had more going on than they probably really wanted to even listen to all my mumbo jumbo. But when you fast forward, ultimately they gave us the opportunity to be in this building. I knew it didn't have, you know, all the utilities in it. To date, we've put in a fire suppression system in it just to be able to manufacture in there. And that was, you know, 10% of what it took to even start this company as a whole. Some of you may remember, we thought to get to this point, we would have already had to sell out to some kind of maybe a strategic partner in our industry or someone to bring more capital in. And a couple of you may be familiar that I've had some of those people down here that had various different offers, whether it was to be employee or owner or something. And my wife and I did elect to go on our own. We felt like we had opportunity and more than enough reason to make a go of that. And so again, right now we employ 10 people. We're running 24/5. It's not the most ideal scenario. And we didn't know what to ask for, right? We didn't know if it would be normal for a company to come in here and say, hey, we need $100,000 to help with our building, or hey, we need $5,000 for computers. So, you know, from a uncomfortable standpoint, I didn't know what to ask for. But we need a lot of help, and we'd take anything we could get. So, but ultimately, this really is just a quick visual. We are trapping a engineered material in between other resins for safety. This is all about consumer safety. This is what FDA does to make your milk cartons, to make your yogurt cups. This is what, if we go out in the parking lot and roll under any of your vehicles that are newer than like 98, this is what your fuel tanks are made of. So this is what the United States Environmental Protection has drove to in terms of standards for consumer products and safety when it comes to anything with chemicals. And so that's pretty well what our business model is. And we're really close to having a second machine now to do the same thing. It'll take about 6 to 8 months and, quite a bit more capital, but we're really trying to reel some people in. And part of those questions always culminate to, do you own your building? What's your lease look like? What does the facility look like? And that part of it still has more questions than I have answers. But again, Tennessee Central has been so great to us in letting us be there. But how do you plan now, right? What are the intentions of that building? What are our options? So we're really kind of stuck waiting to see, now that we've finally put everything in place that we said we would do. We're kind of hoping that there might be something on the other side of that now. But we understand that there's a lot that goes on, and there's way more going on than just us too. So we're open to anyone that wants to come down and see the facility. Anybody that would like to come down and meet some of the employees. When we put out for hiring here in the city first, we had 6 people almost within 2 weeks, and they've all still been with us now for 6 weeks. So pretty cool, people from Highway 10 and just right here in town. And it's just it's a neat thing. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and thank you for letting me have a couple words.
Mr. Jones, don't run off. I want to keep you at the podium if you don't mind. Let's stay up there because there might be some more questions from other members, and that way you won't have to make trips. Does that kind of answer your question, Ms. Leah? Ms. Bay, do you have anything you would like to ask him?
I'm not sure I have anything to ask at this moment. I do want to let everyone know that I did have some communications with your operations manager, Heather Bay, and also the creator of this document. And this document was actually created based off of multiple other grant applications that are pretty standard to probably your other grant applications that you applied for. So hopefully it was just a cut and paste for you, and preparation for more opportunities for you. So and to extend the answer to your question, I left it open because as the creator of the document, I didn't want to speak for this body and state that we were going to be offering what we were going to be offering. So it was very neutrally discussed because I didn't know the intentions, and he just had a lot to write down to kind of feed us about his organization, what he is creating. And I would like to possibly come back for questions after everybody else speaks, because I could have questions because I created the document. I'd like everybody else to ask the questions first. So except for thank you for bringing Highway 10 employees some opportunity, Highway 10 residents some opportunity. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Jones, go ahead.
If I could mention one more thing, one of the biggest changes that's happened since the application is we did sign that contract that I mentioned that took, more than 50% of our capacity. So we have a 2-year supply agreement that's, pretty formal at this point with a pretty major company. So from the risk standpoint, we've really overcome some of those hurdles. So I just wanted to make that known. I don't think I mentioned that before.
I would like to ask, so if we're clear, you are up and running and pushing product, and at what percentage of your maximum capacity are you operating at now? And how long till you ramp up into 100%?
So right now the customer's committed to 13 days. We can make about 3,000 units per day. So they're committing about 40,000 parts per month, which is roughly 6 truckloads from us, 2 per week. So we're kind of looking at that last week, trying to figure out, do we pay everyone to be off right now until we fill that gap? Over the last 6 months, I've been very hesitant to reach out because some of our target market, frankly, is Echo, it's John Deere, it's Husqvarna. It's some of these guys that I really don't want to botch my first on-site kind of opportunity with them. And so as a result of that, we've been very cautious about that next step while making sure that our machine would actually run. I've committed 13 days to this company, but I also need to make sure it will run 13 days of a 20-day work schedule. And so far that's been great. We crossed the threshold of it where now we're more reliant on the supply chain to keep us from stopping than so much our technical and our maintenance and all of those things. So for the most part, we've been dancing around that step to take us beyond 55% capacity. So far, there's only one other customer who's sending us some molds, and it's small runs, you know, a couple days every quarter. It's decent business, but it's smaller run. But we're going to start garnering some of those conversations we've had for the last 2 years. And that's really where I intend to take that next step, is site visits where Ken Carter from John Deere that makes the decisions comes down and sees, oh, wow, you aren't kidding. You know, you have a machine, you're capable, you have people. We recently, actually last week, just passed a third-party audit from an independent lab in our sphere, right, to be ASTM approved. So I feel like there's a lot of answers to your question about the 55%, but all of those things are in motion.
Mr. Moreland, do you have any thoughts or comments or questions?
Yeah, you might have already answered this question before, but how long have you been running at that capacity? And how long is your contract again with?
We started production. I'm going to say we started production. How about we started paying Middle Tennessee Electric, right? We started paying Middle Tennessee Electric in April, where we were running throughout. We scrapped probably, I don't know, a week or so, maybe a week and a half of product, not running throughout the week, but just on a day shift while we were trying to get specifications down. But when you really stand back and look at it, I would say that last week in June, we've been on every week since then, and a few times we ran through the weekend. So it's probably really only 4 weeks of running, but we've shipped out cumulatively from when we started producing product until now, in that April time range, we've shipped out over 50,000 units. So, you know, again, we make 3,000 a day. We got up to a around the clock scenario pretty quickly. But that was kind of the ramp up period.
Anything else?
I don't have anything else right now.
Mr. Robert Thurman, do you have any questions or comments?
I think this was when we started this with the application and so forth. It's new to everybody as far as this is the first time for the board and the first time. And he was, I guess, you were given a wish list in so many ways. This has been going on for several months, I guess, when we first got the application approved and so forth. I applaud everything they're doing there, and I hope, you know, it just keeps going in an upward trajectory. I guess my question from the board standpoint, we all know, this is not really a question, that the way we have gained funds in the past was selling of land. There is no more land to sell. This balance that we have here that we've accepted in the treasurer's report, since the time that we first created this application, we have signed on with Retail Strategies for a commitment of $105,000, correct? Total, and we've paid our first year of $35,000. So we still have a $70,000 obligation there. I just don't know from the board standpoint what comfort level do we have as far as helping someone and having some kind of balance that we can, if whatever the needs are that come up that we feel like we have to meet. We were lucky and we got back the costs for the meat packing plant from Tennessee Central. Some things like that are good, but that was just like a $5,000 deposit that we got to make. I don't know where we create an amount to help someone with our limited finances. That's my question. That's my comment.
I hear what you're saying and I understand, and I would encourage the board to consider Mr. Thurman's comments, keeping in mind that whatever decision you make, that we do have finite, non-recurring funding. Now, we did get some funding from the city council or county commission this year, a small amount that is going to be specifically earmarked towards retail strategies going forward. And he is correct, we are obligated to a 3-year contract. So bearing that in mind, just keep that that ceiling, for lack of a better word, is in your mind, in your deliberations and your thoughts and comments. Mr. Graves, do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, my first question is about what we were just talking about on the treasurer's report. By my math, we paid the first year, we owe the 2, that's the 70, and that leaves us with 49.5, basically. Does that balance, if you consider what we still owe retail strategies, does that account for the monies that we have been given from the commission? So that's not reflected in the balance. Okay, so it'll be the amount that we have minus our 2 more years of retail strategy gives us the 49.5 plus the additional we'll get. Okay, so that'll put us around 60-ish, right? Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood that correctly.
Yes, that's correct. Your
Okay.
math is correct. We did get the approval through the county commission, but those funds have not been dispersed. So they are not reflected in this balance.
Okay.
That, I might just add, and I think to make, though the new budget, they can be paid at any time. They were approved, we just have not paid them yet, is that correct?
We need a request from the board to disperse your funds. And that's something I was going to mention when I get to public comment. So to receive your funds, we need a request for the funds because we got to keep documentation of that, and then we release the funds. So we'll need a written request from the board requesting release of your funds.
As far as proper etiquette in a meeting, is that something that can be requested under other business, or does that need to be specified on the agenda for the next meeting?
Well, you got an attorney here, but I would think just since you've already requested the funds, officially you requested the funds months ago, I would just think something from the chairman asking for them to be dispersed, that would be in line with what you've already voted on.
Very good. Does that sound permissible, Mr. Benson? Okay, maybe when we get to the section of other business, we could discuss that a little further. Mr. Graves.
My question next is for Carson. With your new contract and the capacity that will require, will you be able to do that with your existing employees, or are you going to have to hire additional employees? That's the first part of the question. And the second part of the question is, with that business, will you be in the black?
That's always the question, first of all. We're gonna need about 3 more hourly operators than we have right now to sustain that. We hadn't gone to full load because of the cyclical nature of our startup and the machinery's reliability, and then now over to the supply chain reliability. So we were really worried about tarnishing our brand new, relationship with the community by hiring people and letting them go and hiring and letting them go. So we've ran pretty limited, but we're going to be hiring another person for each shift as a result of the contract. And it just barely puts us to where we can take care of all of our obligations. Some of you may know Pathways Lending is a CDFI, and that's who funded me. I think the primary part of their business is 70% of their funding has to go to rural counties and things of the like. So one of the things that they did to help that specific problem, Scott, with the contract, was they actually changed my funding from a 5-year amortization to a 10. So that really was the tipping point for us, is they believed in us, I think, just enough. And now that they see the machine running, they were okay getting, encumbered another few points, if you will, to allow us that safety. But really it's only barely. And I kind of knew that from the beginning. We always had our eyes on one of these large scale portable gas can customers to help pay the bills and put everything in place so that we could start calling on those relationships. So only just barely. There's not a lot of breathing room at only that 55% level. Now, that being said, this is their busy season. And so they anticipate about 60,000 units a month through the end of the month, next month, and potentially after that. So I hope for the sake of, again, what's happened with the pandemic and the delays and the months without sales, I hope my team can keep up and I hope the machine can keep up. But so far they want us to stay on around the clock. So.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And you do look tired, brother. Get some rest.
Mr. Jewell, do you have any questions?
No, I just wanted to check about the funds if they were available.
And thank you, and we appreciate that. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, do you have any comments or questions?
I got some questions for Carson, but they're mainly just my own informational, looking at it from the solid waste part, particularly the pellets. I actually had a discussion up through our solid waste audit about, supplying plastic, and there's a pellet manufacturer down in Alabama trying to find a way to lure them up here that makes those. And I've thrown Carson out there numerous times saying, well, we got one in PowerCom. We got one in PowerCom. We got a customer right here. What are we gonna do to get them up here? So I just got some little individual questions on that. It's nothing related to the application. It's more operational and trying to use that as a basis for improving the diversion of plastic up here. So, and as far as that goes, as far as the funding, that's a discussion I think we need to have going forward. I've looked at other places and they're funded various ways. I know Montgomery County, you got the city and county both put in. I think the Chamber of Commerce puts in, so they got various revenue streams. Some of them get some funds through, I believe, hotel occupancy taxes and those kind of things. So I do think it's something we need to look at, and I think some of your justification going forward is going to be discussed a little bit later on when we get in talking about retail strategies and some of the other things that happen with the board. And I would just ask if we could keep track of data as far as, okay, you spent $1, what was the return on that investment? I mean, right now, just to throw it out there, we're getting a little bit ahead of it, but the retail strategies, you paid $35,000 this year and they helped us get a $47,500 grant. So you're a little bit to the good right there already. So those are just things I would, just from my side of things, looking at it, and Mr. Jewell can throw his out there too. He's on the chair of budget and finance, so he can look at it from that point of view. But I think we just keep track of that data. So you show return on that investment and then use that as justification, maybe to increase what your request is. And there's just various ways to look at it. And I'm still trying to get all that and see how we need to fund it with various other projects we got going on. But I do think it is a discussion that needs to be had.
Mr. Jewell?
Can this body issue bonds? Not saying whether we could, should, but can we? I mean, legally, can the Industrial Development Board issue public bonds for sale? Because that's a revenue source that I've seen used in this type of development in other cities, I guess you'd say, that I was involved with, particularly Montgomery County. They were very big on bond issues for people wanting to start businesses and things of that nature. The one that we started over there, there was a bond issue to help us build a building. So I don't know whether that needs to can come from the Industrial Development Board, or it would have to come from the municipality, I guess is my question. And again,
board itself, the one that obligated to pay off the bond, might not necessarily recognize the-
Thank you, Mr. Benson. Thank you, Mr. Jewell. Well, I think we need to talk about this a little more at length and get some input from the board members. I would encourage anyone who has a thought or an opinion or a question to please voice it. Mr. Graves, it looks like you want to raise your hand. Mr. Graves.
I think we all agree putting a number on this effort to help Iris is the most difficult part of this whole conversation. I guess I'm going to throw one out there and we'll bat it around. You know, I'm looking at what our balance is going to be after we get the funds from the commission. And I like round numbers. And $5,000 is about 8.5% of what we're going to have left. That will leave us, you know, the balance to do other things similarly, hopefully with other companies. I realize we have the funding shut down right now because of the retail strategies commitment, but I guess that's roughly the number I'm thinking of. And so I just would like to hear from somebody else besides myself on what they think that number should be.
Does anyone have a thought or comment on Mr. Graves' comment? Ms. Bay?
I was giving y'all a chance to talk. I agree with this number. I think it's a safe number. We are closing the applications for the future until we figure out a stronger revenue source. I think this gentleman has brought 6 jobs to this community and looking for 3 more. He has a sewer that he needs to put in. Tommy's here, so can I bring Tommy to the table and see what that entails for the water departments for the sewer? I didn't see that in here. You didn't put that in here, did you? The estimate for your sewer? Okay, I may have overlooked it. I'm sorry.
Mr. Jones, do you have any sort of idea about what it's going to cost? Do you have sewer access available? And so you have no sewer possibilities whatsoever. Does that mean that commercial building is on a septic type system?
There's no septic back there right now. The whole South Campus doesn't have a sewer line to it. So if it's my understanding, I think Charlie and Dan at Tennessee Central have been trying to get some things moving with regard to a grant to potentially supply that whole South Campus. Because since we've moved in, now there's, I think, 8 other companies back there between the vending machine company, you know, there's a electrical company, another mechanic came back there, another fabricator. So there's 6, 7 of us back there from, you know, nearly 18 months ago when I was the only one back there besides the county. But none of us have any kind of a septic right now or a sewer line. I believe the closest one is the well house off of the prison where we got bids from, I can't think of their name, the same contractor that the county uses for a lot of the work. Kemp, yes, the Kemp brothers. So they came out and scoped everything out and provided us an estimate to run a line out.
Tommy, can you step to the microphone and kind of give us an idea about the overview of the future of possible sewer there, please?
Hit that, Mayor. All right. I think that grant y'all talking about, or he was referring to, I think that didn't work out. I don't think that the Tennessee Central grant we supported, tried to help with the county. I think we did something. to support it. I don't think that worked out for them out there. They didn't get that grant, so. He's roughly, I forget the footage, there's several, you remember the footage, about 3,000 feet, does that sound right? 1,600 feet is to the nearest hookup he can get to a sewer line. It'd have to be a pressure pump right now for that situation. I think we snowballed some ideas with Tennessee Central. There's an old existing old fire hydrant line out there that used to come off the river for their fire protection. And that there's some water mains in the ground that could be converted. We talked about this, could be converted over to pressure mains to get sewer, maybe use that to get sewer to these other locations, but that idea never went nowhere. We did throw that as a, that could be a possibility. But right now, all that's, the project they were looking at was a combination of pressure, pump, and gravity. But it can't be, it was not gonna be able to be both, or be one of the, you could do one of the, you couldn't do gravity all alone. So it's, and almost all that's a downhill grade. Once you leave his spot right there, it's all kind of downhill all the way back into those other businesses that are in there now. So it's a challenge.
Mr. Jewell.
Tommy, that is pretty rock. That'd be pretty much going through rock, would it not, on that? And I know Carson, I think we dealt with trying to get a septic permit and could not even get a septic permit. I tried to help him with that early on when he went in, because it's all disturbed soil. It's all rock. I mean, his only option is sewer, and septic is not an option.
Yeah.
Tommy, is there, I know we have members of the water board here as well, but are there any plans to put sewer to his building?
Well, that's gets considered Tennessee Central's property, correct? It's not a county property, it's their property. They're the ones that have to initiate that. Yeah.
And there's nothing.
Because that's why we supported their grant, to try to get that funding to put in. I forget how much it was now, but it would have took care of some of his area and some of the frontal buildings on the right, on the left. But you still had all those other buildings down off in the lower elevated areas that wouldn't have got fixed or covered there.
Thank you, Tommy. Mr. Jones, would you step back up? I have a question for you, if you don't mind, and hopefully this will be the last time we make you get up. I don't expect you to give me an exact figure, but the employees that you now have under your roof, can you kind of give us an idea of the average pay of those employees?
Yeah, the salaried staff is about $70,000 average. There's 4 of those guys, and then the hourly operators, I think that average would be somewhere close to 30,000 annually. And there's 3 of them now. There will be 6 of them. When we add another machine, hopefully in about 12, 18 months from now, that number would double on the production operators. We'd probably add 1 or 2 more salaried staff to that number as well.
Where do you see your salaries going in the future when you get up and running and these people become more experienced and more trained? Where do you project the future salaries of the average employee to go?
Well, we have actually a goal that we really would like to get to where everyone's almost $1,000 a week. We'd like to see $52,000 salaries across the board. We feel like because of the time in terms of the year that it is and how long this technology has been out at a higher level, automotive manufacturing, medical manufacturing, right? Clean environment manufacturing, all that technology has trickled down and landed into the laps of whoever's more motivated. And so for us, we feel like we have a great opportunity to take advantage of technology. My plant manager's brother-in-law is involved at the tech school. And we've had a couple of the kids come down from mechatronics and industrial maintenance. We're trying to harbor some of that talent that's local and keep it in-house. But really, we'd really like to see 1,000 a week be kind of the standard. But a lot of that has to come with getting this first machine at its capacity. And again, we're facing decisions right now, like stopping the machine to load a truck because we don't have a dock. So some of our own hurdles, I mean, you knew they were coming, right? But you could only battle so many things along the way. And now that we're there and in production, I mean, I have nothing to complain about. I've got more than I deserve and everything is awesome. But there's just a few things that we don't quite know what to do yet. And unfortunately, from an equity standpoint, here we are just barely pulling in receivables, right? We're starting as a company, but it's not in any kind of format where if I go and get some equity to help us out, we're going to get any credit for anything we've accomplished whatsoever, as opposed to if we were able to do that 6 months from now with some sales set behind just this contract we've signed. So if that kind of gives you an idea.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jones. Mr. Graves had mentioned a figure of $5,000. Ms. Bay seemed to concur. Is anyone interested in proposing a motion? Mr. Graves.
I guess I'd like to hear from the other board members what your thoughts are.
I agree with what you said. I mean, we've led him down this path. He's had some time invested. I know as a board, we've kind of shifted our focus on what we're doing right now. But we did put this in front of him and he answered, and he has time invested. And I think $5,000 is a good number for us. And I don't think Carson would feel like his time has been wasted by filling this application out. And if you want to put that in form of a motion, I'll be happy to second.
Mr. Thurman, thoughts?
It may have seemed like that when I spoke originally, I was just saying that we couldn't spend any money. I didn't mean that. Probably, I think exactly what Craig said, we initiated this process to help people. And I think we have to do something. But I know this seems nominal for what his needs are. But, there could be other people that have needs also. And I think we try to represent as many people as we can and do what we can for people. And I guess, I would have a different viewpoint if we hadn't signed on for retail strategies to do more. But I'm fine with the 5,000 also.
I would say that everyone at this board who I know personally and have had the benefit of working with, that we do as a board and individual members and just citizens of this community, I think we all have a focus on serving the greater good, not just the individuals. So I can appreciate your comment, Mr. Thurman, that we do have to think about the greater good of the community. Now, Mr. Jones, I know, is willing his business to be so, and I know for a fact that several of us have been in your position, and we admire your determination and your fortitude and the grit. We also understand the sleepless nights and early mornings. Trust me, we've been there, and we admire that, and we still vividly remember the toiling and the pain involved in that. So I want to say on behalf of this board that no matter what happens, we support you. We want you to succeed. We need you to succeed. And I am proud that you located here in Trousdale County. And I know that you are facing some adversity, but oftentimes people like you with more willpower than capital are the people who are most successful. And it seems like you are offering very well-paid jobs in the future as you ramp up and they get trained. anybody in this county that makes $52,000 a year, maybe you're not getting rich, but it's certainly not anything to sneeze at when you're a blue collar worker, as I've been my whole life. So I do appreciate that. So if anyone has any other comments, please raise your hand or speak up. But otherwise, I would be interested. Miss Leah, did you have something?
It just sounds to me like he needs a dock. Is that what I understand? What spreadsheet was that on? Was there an estimate invoice in here for that? Can I get you to step to the mic for me? Thank you.
Our most recent bid was from a local guy here that Tennessee Central recommended, and he said 14,000 to scrape off all of our back and bring in enough rock. Because there is a dock, it's there, and clearly they used it back when the building was in use for the nuclear plant and the prison, but over time it's just grown over. And so the biggest thing was they were gonna scrape it all and just bring in a bunch of rock. But we got 3 bids and the lowest of them was about 14,000, so.
And you're currently spending how much to just transport it from a truck to your building?
It's just an extra person's time, so it's getting very near and dear to lost sales though, because we don't have enough people, right?
Okay.
So I can throw another body at it, but at the risk of someone not watching the machine and far greater turmoil happening.
I'm in support of helping him. I think he needs a dock.
I like her.
We all do. Would someone like to make a motion, please?
I would like to make a motion that we grant $5,000 to Iris Plastics.
I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Moreland seconds the motion. Is there any further discussion? Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mayor?
So I overstepped my bounds, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry. When it hit the button before I was recognized, I apologize. Just one of the questions I have, and this is just something we can gather on my office's side. I'd just like to know what's his business personal property taxes he's paying. If he brings in a second machine, what's the business personal property tax on that? There won't be any real personal property because the building is owned by Tennessee Central and it's tax exempt. But also, what kind of sales tax he bringing in? He's shipping out 40,000 units per month. If he increases to $60,000 units per month, what's the sales tax revenue to the Trousdale County on that? It's just kind of tax revenue questions I've gotten. That's something we can find out through my office, but I just want to think that should be taken into consideration, looking at, what's going to be the return on your investment. If you put $5,000 into it, yet he's going to get 20,000 more units and it's going to bring in $3,000 worth of revenue where there's a $2,000 difference there. So it's just a little question there. And I just wanted to let the board know those things need to be taken into consideration as well.
I think that's a valid point. This gentleman is creating jobs. He's creating revenues, tax revenues for the county, sales tax, real property tax, personal property taxes. He's creating jobs, which is huge and in dire need in our area, especially in that segment of skilled laborers. I think that is one of our biggest needs. So I would completely agree with the mayor's comments on that. We have a motion and a second. If there's any other questions or comments before we vote.
I would just like to ask, sales tax, all your sales are tax exempt for resale, aren't they, Carson? I mean, your wholesale to other entities, are you turning in a monthly sales tax on your sales?
You have to have the sales tax set up to pay. I think there's a nominal percentage you have to pay regardless. I don't know the exact answer to that right now. I mean, obviously we have the franchise and excise tax without fail, but we had to set up a sales tax account with the state. And I think there's still a nominal fee there from a percentage standpoint of our sales. I don't have the exact answer, but I'd be more than happy to get it and bring it back.
Just been my experience with wholesale sales, that they're tax exempt. You do have to report what they were. But it also gets you where you can buy your materials tax exempt as well. But usually manufacturing does not have any sales tax. So, I mean, it's not like a retail establishment.
Yeah, it's a little different if you're making your own product versus being a contracted manufacturer.
I think it's a valid point because typically the sales tax applies to the end user and as a vendor, and he's going to be technically a vendor of sorts, manufacturer. He wouldn't be prone to that, but he is creating a lot of other, tax revenues and income for, for employees in the county. So we have Ms. Bay, you have a comment?
I have a question and a comment and a question. So the comment is to repeat what the mayor stated, that so Tennessee Central owns the property and they will not be paying property tax, but they will be responsible for paying a personal property tax on the value of the equipment that they are manufacturing the product on. As a wholesale food manufacturer, as a wholesale manufacturer, you do not pay sales tax unless unless there is a cash and carry at the side door. So you might have a little bit of opportunity for that if you had something that had some blemishes and you didn't want it to go to your retailer, speaking from experience. So that would be one reason why it would be set up, would be that cash and carry on the side, but not of a large number. So my statement is Tennessee Central owns the property. They introduced this opportunity to us. We walked into this application with wanting to help this community. And when we did that, we presented this grant application, not sure where we were going to go in the future. And my question is to this board is not to Mr. Jones, but can we determine our futuristic business model plan that we want to do and have as an agenda from here on out for grants based on the retail strategy information that we receive or other opportunities that come to us still? Are we closing it off? The grant application.
It has been indefinitely suspended as of the last meeting. Now, that doesn't mean that it won't come back. I think if I understood correctly, the will of the board was while we were under contract to Retail Strategies, we wanted to limit our grant application or our potential for granting funds because we had finite non-recurring revenue stream of funds in our account. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question correctly, but if for some reason we get to the end of this Retail Strategies road and they're doing real well and the county commission decides to fund it more, then we might have more available funding to reopen that grant application process. But at the moment, we're looking at a very hard figure that's not growing. So if I understood the will of the board from the last meeting, that we wanted to put that on hold, temporary hold, with not necessarily an end date in sight, but certainly within our 3-year contract. If we're coming up on our 1 year, we're probably 3 or 4 months away from our 1 year anniversary with Retail Strategy. So we have over 2 years to go, but we're right. We have paid one payment. So we are certainly obligated for $70,000. And I'm going to address the Retail Strategy a little bit more also later. Ms. Bay.
Thank you. I just need to get that on the record. We've had some questions about that. And then also something I didn't state a minute ago, a conveyor line itself could be personal property value of anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000. He's going to probably start to begin to invest in equipment that's probably going to run him about $30,000 a pop And I hope to see you buy $1 million piece of equipment so we can tax you on that, just so you know that. So, thank you.
Did I adequately answer your question?
They'll call me if you didn't.
Okay, well, if I screwed up, let them call me too. So I have a motion, I have a second. If there's any further discussion or comments or questions. If not, let's call a vote. All in favor of granting Iris Plastics $5,000 per their grant request application, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. It passes. Congratulations. Mr. Jones, I know it's a drop in the bucket.
I just want to say thank you.
Well, I know it's a drop in the bucket, but we want to help as much as we can. And if we had more ability, I believe we absolutely would help you more if we could. But we're rooting for you. Our next agenda is number 7, update on retail strategies. And I'm going to give the mayor a chance to weigh in on this as well, because he has a more accurate number. But I will say that he alluded to it earlier, that they helped us with a grant that is going to fund wayfinder signs, very colorful, very easy to read, attractive signs that'll be put around town that'll point towards the historic downtown or towards the historic courthouse or toward, the battlefield or something like that. And I believe that was in the sum of about $42,000 or $47,000. Mayor, can you, clarify that, please?
The grant amount was 47,500. And as you said, that was for what they call wayfindings, basically directional signs to get you around the community. This is something that Retail Strategies recommended in their downtown improvement study or plan that they did. It was also part of the 2016 downtown Hartsville connectivity plan, also mentioned doing wayfinding signs. So that was in 2 different plans and we got that funded. And as I said, that's 47,500. And they did the vast majority of the work on the grant application. I had to fill in a couple of questions here and there, but they did the vast majority of the work on that.
And the mayor's right to point out, we've spent $35,000 for our first year, and they've already helped us in great detail obtain a grant greater than what we've spent for our first year's fees. And they've done an extensive amount of data research that we all have packets on. I will also tell you that we are trying to resurrect the hotel possibility for the future. Our representative, Mr. Cook from Retail Strategies, has been in contact with Cobblestone Motels, and they expressed an interest in still continuing to consider our community for a franchise. The way that'll work is Cobblestone will sell a franchise to an investor group, a local investor group. So we are interested in anyone who would like to be more informed on the possibility of becoming an investor in that investor group. Of course, the figures are a few years old now, but basically they were looking to raise about $1.4 million in pledged capital from the investors for the overall loan, which would equate to about 20% of the loan for a hotel construction. As part of that, $100,000, if the figures are still true as they were before, $100,000 would be given by Cobblestone as an investor group. So they would actually have a piece of the investment group, and then they would run and manage the franchise for a particular fee, which is a pretty common practice in franchises. They will come in and train and run and staff it. So the investor group is not necessarily obligated to take active day-to-day role. So if you know of anybody who is particularly interested in talking about that and potentially interested in becoming an investor, I would highly recommend that you get some information and let us contact them, because we're informally kind of running around talking to some people and, trying to resurrect that possibility for the future. Beyond that, to my knowledge, there has been very much more activity that I've been made aware of. Mayor, have you heard anything else?
Hotel specific? Oh, anything? Yeah, I've marketed that site to a couple other region or national retailers. So I guess if you're going to buy it, need to hurry. There was one of them that's very, very interested in locating here, and I think there's a high likelihood we'll get them, but I can't guarantee. And I don't know that it's going to be on that side, but I'm getting more and more calls. As we keep growing, you see all the growth coming out. I'm very interested to see what the census is going to look like. But as you all know, just looking around, our growth is not slowing down. And as retail strategy has said, retail follows rooftops, and we're starting to get a lot of rooftops.
I think something else to make note that Retail Strategies brought to light that I don't think any of us fully realize is that there were not a single property in Trousdale County of commercial that was on the national MLS for properties. LoopNet, I think, is the proper name for it, but it's sort of like the real estate MLS for commercial properties, not a single property. So anyone outside of this county may not have been aware that there was any commercial property available here. And I think that is something that Retail Strategies is correcting. So we're potentially going to start getting more national exposure to larger franchises or potential commercial buyers. You can't sell it if they don't know it's for sale. And it's not like it used to be. They don't just drive around looking for properties. Everybody sits on their computer. If they don't see it, it don't exist. So pretty excited about that. We have a real estate agent and a county commissioner in the gallery now, and he can tell you, if you don't put it on the MLS, nobody knows it's there. You just don't sell it. It just doesn't happen. People in California flip through the computer. If they don't see it in 2 seconds, they keep going. So that's that potentially could be why we're starting to get a few phone calls that we were not getting before. So yet again, intangible as far as dollars right now, but starting to reap the rewards of this investment with Retail Strategies, and I'm really excited about that. Mayor, did you have anything to add?
I was just going to say, the last one that contacted me, I actually sent them 3 or 4 more sites that they didn't even know about. So if we can get more of those online, if the property owners are willing to put those online, I think the interest is there.
We are a very desirable community. We have beautiful landscape. We have good people. We have a growing population. We are still within proximity of one of the fastest growing cities in the country, Nashville. So I think we have a lot to offer. The next thing on our agenda, we need to do a formal motion designating Rochelle McCullen Alts as our agent of a record for the Industrial Development Board. This is a legal step that has to be done to allow them to represent us in the matters going forward with the pilot programs. Am I representing that correctly, Mr. Benson?
Yes, you are, and really one of the steps when the deal with work come through, certified one.
Oh, excuse me. In order to do that, having us designated as registered agent, if there's something missing with a filing with the state, if the board were to be served with a lawsuit, we're going to get that letter in the mail. So we're going to know immediately that we're not in compliance with something. So that we're going to be the first ones to know that we are or are not in compliance, which is something that we're going to have to certify and be able to put our name on and say that we are in good standing. So that's kind of our step. And this is a request that we had made, I know, to the chairman and the mayor when we came originally back in April, just something moving forward to make that change at some point in the future. So, and I prepared that draft resolution for y'all's consideration tonight. So.
Did I present that correctly, that we need to make a formal motion to make Rochelle McCullen Alts the agent of record for the Industrial Development Board of Hartsville, Trousdale County? Is that correct?
Correct. And just to grant you the authority to sign the document that was in the packet. So
granting the chairman the authority to sign the document, making it so. Also, I have a question. Does that mean that Rochelle McCullough Alts represents the board in general or just in the term of the pilot program?
It does not expand the scope of our representation. You really can designate anyone to be your registered agent. So yes, we are affiliated to the terms of our engagement as defined by that original agreement. But it doesn't necessarily expand our scope beyond that. Now, we may very well get other type of filings or be reached out by somebody outside the scope of our pilot representation. And of course, we're going to be accommodating and be helpful with that, which I think you agree.
Thank you, sir. So we, just so we have it worded correctly, we need to have a formal motion designating Rochelle McCullough Alts law firm as the agent of record for the Hartsville-Trousdale County Industrial Development Board and authorizing the chairman to sign the document solidifying that agreement. Does anybody in the, Ms. Bay?
Make the motion to designate Rochelle McCullough Alts as the agent of record for the Hartsville-Trousdale County Industrial Development Board and authorize the chair to sign those documents, giving authority to the chairman to sign those documents for any such needed legal. I wanted to add that little tag you put in there. So in the event that we need him for anything else other than retail strategies too. So for all of the above, that umbrella.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Graves gives a second. We have a motion. We have a second. Is there any questions or comments? Discussion?
The thing with that there was a $20 filing fee, and I have that included in that resolution. That
Okay, yes, we need to, can you amend your motion to include the $20 filing fee, Ms. Beck?
I have the $20 fee.
Very good. Mr. Graves seconds the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It is unanimous. It is so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Benson. We appreciate your help. Please tell Mr. Rochelle hello for us.
We will. Thank you.
Under other business, we have already kind of discussed the Wayfinder Signs Grant under the retail strategies thing, but the other thing that the other issue that we wanted to bring up under other businesses, we would need a board member to make a formal request for the county commission or the county of Trousdale County to disperse the $10,000 that was approved in the budget recently. So do we have anybody that would make a motion, please?
Make a motion that the county commission disperse funds to the IDB board for retail strategies. Sorry.
Mr. Borland makes a motion. Do I have a second? Ms. Leah Petty makes the second. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Mr. Mayor?
I would just say the letter needs to be directed to the mayor's office. Since the county commission has passed the budget, it's up to me to release the funds. So the letter needs to be directed to me.
Do we need to amend the motion to say request from the mayor's office as opposed to commission?
I would just say, just make a request to the county and then you got it covered either way.
Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second, and that motion, if carried, the chair will submit a written request to the mayor's office for dispersion of those funds. We have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any further questions or comments? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It so carries. We are now at our section where we can allow public comment for anything that was on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone in the public that would make a comment or have a question? Mr. Jewell?
Just where are we on the pilot program, or can we have kind of a status update on it? Or, I mean, if nothing elaborate.
Actually, we were discussing that just prior to this meeting. We sort of put that on hold a little bit while you guys were dealing with the budget and some of the other hot topics that you had on your plate and didn't want to, overburden you with what you had. But the Mr. Rochelle has some policy and procedure changes that need to be clarified and brought up to date in today's standards, because the draft of the policy and procedures pilot program that we are working with is very old. It's 5 or 7 years old, and it was just a draft. It was a rough draft. And Mr. Benson and Mr. Rochelle have worked tirelessly line by line to go through it, and they've made suggestions on language and policies that we should address and consider changing and amending to adhere to today's policies. In that, Mr. Rochelle suggested that we put together a committee of, 4 to 6 citizens from this community that would sit in a meeting with Mr. Benson and potentially Mr. Rochelle, if his schedule allows, and help us go through that and put in policy or put in their input and their opinions on that. He was looking for public buy-in and input into those policies. The mayor and I discussed it briefly just before the meeting, and I think we're going to try to put that together here pretty quickly and schedule. Once we get a panel of people put together that can, it's fairly complicated, that can grasp that and want to put in some opinions, then we're going to have a meeting with Mr. Benson and start working through that, and then we can move forward. Does that answer your question?
In a way, it probably made more questions arise. This committee of 4 people, though, they will be selected by whom?
We would welcome your input. I was suggesting a few people. The mayor had a few people. We're open for anybody. It's not necessarily exclusive or inclusive. We want to include people in the committee if they so choose.
It did not mean to intimate that it was. I was just trying to figure out how it would be decided, whether it would be this board to decide that or the mayor to decide that. That's all.
I believe it's
I just know that we've had a lot of discussions on it, and we're all excited about it and wanting to move forward with it. And there was nothing on here about it. So I just wondered kind of where we were with it. That's all.
well, and I can appreciate your question. And it just kind of came up today because I had sent an email to you and the mayor a day or two ago, and he responded today, and I didn't get to read it till this afternoon. Mr. Graves and I were tied up all day in a meeting. But it's an informal thing. It's not a formal committee formation. We're just putting together some citizens that can help us go through that and give us some input. So we have some community stake in our policies and procedures going forward and get their input from that does. And this committee will not necessarily include anyone from this board. We want somebody external from the board. Now, I'm sure I'll sit in on the meeting just for general purpose to be there, but not necessarily have any input. Mr. Benson, would you like to comment on this?
Yes, sir, if I may. And really, I was going to emphasize the lack of not very formal, not necessarily a committee to vote. Mr. Rochelle's idea behind that was more is just to get the buy-in where we're not forcing anything on anybody and just adding legitimacy to the program as we move forward. So, and particularly making it not necessarily our ideas, but the community's ideas. So.
And I'll say that anyone that is listening to this meeting that would like to talk about that, to please contact me or Mr. Jewell or the mayor. I think we would welcome any citizens in the community that would like to be considered for that informal panel. But Mr. Rochelle felt strongly that we should have some community input into those changes in language. And then going forward, once that document has been solidified, then Mr. Benson and Mr. Rochelle can submit that documentation for the next step, which I believe would go towards the formation of the subcommittee under budget and finance, and then go through the county commission for approval under certain parameters. Anyone else have any public comments or any questions pertaining to tonight's agenda or anything else? Miss Debbie.
Middle one, okay. That motion earlier, the motion to suspend taking any more applications, that was at the May 25th meeting, not last month, but May 25. So I didn't know if you care the actual date.
No,
If she
thank you for
was-
the correction, but you are correct.
Okay, I didn't know if she was typing in it in the minutes. And then the other thing I just wondered was, it seems like such a little thing to have a dock, you know, and I'm not asking or talking about money coming from this committee, but I think since Tennessee Central owns that land out there and the buildings and things, maybe some of y'all have a relationship with them. Maybe y'all could help talk about something that something could be done, or even citizens, you know, the citizens jump in and help with everything when somebody needs something. And it just seems like such a little thing, you know, and if it's rock, you know, does the county have rock? Or I know you have to be careful. You can't help everyone and you're running into something, but it does seem like a little thing that's affecting his business.
Thank you. I absolutely agree with it. I'm sure Mr. Jones would welcome any community members that would be willing to help him in mitigating some of those expenses. I'm sure he absolutely would not turn them away. So if anyone in our community would like to help, Mr. Mayor.
I'd say the Tennessee Central's, well, the management stance right now is they let it have the building rent free. And their plan was to tear it down. So they were not going to put any money into it. They let him have it rent free. And some of the condition was to fix the building. So that's where that is. We do have an annual meeting. I believe it's on August 7th, but don't hold me to that. I don't remember exactly right now. But I can try to get to that information, or you can contact Tennessee Central. Our annual meeting's coming up second week of August, second, third week of August. If you want to come and address that, you can. As far as giving them rock, the county cannot put any rock or any kind of things that from the county towards his private business. We just can't do that. But I do agree with you. I mean, looking at what he's bringing, and that's why I wanted more information on not just tax payments, but also how many employees live in Trousdale County, you know, just kind of look at seeing what's the tax, the money coming back into the county from investment in his business. But at this point, it's Tennessee Central's property. The county can't put anything into it. And it can't put anything into its business. We do help. The highway department does help maintain the roads and everything out there in an agreement with Tennessee Central. And the water department works with them in regards to some projects, but it's still under the umbrella of Tennessee Central. So we can't do anything for that specific business. But if there's any private organizations that want to donate labor or anything like that, I'm sure Mr. Jones and I'm sure Tennessee Central will be more than welcome to accept that. But as far as the county can do, the only thing we can do is through the Industrial Development Board. If he was a nonprofit, he could come request funds, but he's not a nonprofit, so we can't give money to a private business.
So, Mr. Graves.
Carson, I was looking over your bids, and if I understood it correctly, there were 25 loads of rock. Is that just for the dock area? Okay. If you get the rock in place, I'll bring my equipment out and spread it. All right, let me know.
Thank you, Mr. Graves. So we have a wonderfully generous offer to help. Do we have anybody in the trucking business that can help? I'm sorry, no pressure. Mr. Moreland wants to speak. He's recognized.
I was already going to speak to him after the meeting, but I was going to wait, but I love to speak with you after the meeting. Get out there and take a look and see what you got. I'm sure we can work out something to get rock or dirt or anything. I can work with Scott and we can get you a dock. It won't be a problem.
And the board appreciates Mr. Borland's unsolicited generosity to help Mr. Jones. We always appreciate that. Mr. Moreland is always first in line to help a community member. Thank you, sir. Okay, all kidding aside, thank you folks so much for the evening. I know we kind of ran long tonight. Thank you so much, but we had a lot to discuss. If there's nothing else, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I got one item that's very simple, and I'm sorry you're going to feel like you're back in elementary school, but the request has come from the company that's setting up our system here. If if you all have picked the seats you want to sit in, they're going to program the camera system somehow that I guess maybe it's going to pop your name on screen or something, but we got to have assigned seating. So I wrote down where you're all seating. So I guess I hope you like where you are because that's, if you want to move, now's your chance to do it because that's going to be your seat. No. All right. Thank you.
So I'm understanding this is your assigned seating. That way when you come back for the next meeting, be sure and sit in the same spot. There's a name in front of you. So if you don't remember exactly your position, kind of write down your name that's there. And hopefully next time your name will be on that sheet as well. So you won't forget. But the PA system is fabulous. So awesome. Thank you so much for the county commission for getting that. If there's nothing else, I'll consider a motion to adjourn, and Mr. Graves is first in line and Mr. Moreland seconds. Have a good evening, folks.